Nobody warned you about this. They told you that intelligence was the advantage, that the sharper your mind, the richer your relationships, the deeper your connections, the more understood you would finally feel. They were wrong. The more intelligent a person becomes, the more profoundly, structurally, almost mathematically alone they tend to be. Not because something is broken in them, because something is working exactly as it should. And by the time this is over, you will understand why your loneliness is not a wound, it is a measurement. You know the feeling. You are in a room full of people, a party, a family dinner, a workplace, and somehow the crowded room makes it worse, not better, worse. Everyone around you is laughing at something that doesn't interest you, debating something that seems trivially obvious, celebrating something that feels shallow. You smile, you perform, you say the right things, but behind your eyes there is this quiet, almost exhausting distance, like watching the world through soundproof glass, close enough to see everything, too far to actually feel it. You have tried to close that distance. You have searched for people who think the way you think, people who feel the weight of things the way you do, and occasionally, rarely, you find one. But the connection is always fragile, always temporary, always interrupted by the same pattern. You go too deep, too fast. You expect too much. You become too honest at the wrong moment, and they pull away. Or you do. You have probably blamed yourself for this, told yourself you were too much, too intense, too inside your own head. That if you could just be a little more casual, a little more easy, a little more like everyone else, you would finally feel less alone. Arthur Schopenhauer, the most rigorously honest philosopher who ever put a pen to paper, would tell you that this is the cruelest lie you have ever told yourself. Here is the brutal architecture of what is actually happening. Human connection, real, deep, sustained connection, requires a specific kind of compatibility, not personality compatibility, not shared interests, cognitive compatibility, the ability to process the world at roughly the same resolution. Most people experience life at what we might call standard definition. Events happen, they feel an emotion, they form an opinion, they move on. This is not a flaw, it is efficiency. The human brain evolved to survive, not to philosophize. The System 1 thinker, fast, emotional, instinctual, is perfectly calibrated for most social environments. But a small percentage of minds operate differently. They cannot turn off the analysis. Every conversation has subtext. Every social ritual has an underlying structure they can see. Every piece of received wisdom comes preloaded with a question. But is that actually true? These minds are running a different operating system on the same hardware, and the fundamental incompatibility is not something that good intentions can bridge. Schopenhauer was merciless about this. He wrote that a man of great intellect is like a man with good eyes in the land of the blind, not metaphorically, literally. When you can see things that others cannot, you cannot simply choose to unsee them for the sake of social comfort. The intelligent person carries a weight that most people around them cannot perceive and therefore cannot share. They see the mortality beneath the celebration. They see the performance beneath the confidence. They see the fear beneath the aggression. They walk through ordinary life with a layer of perception that makes ordinary connection feel like trying to have a profound conversation through a bad phone line. Both parties are present. Neither can quite hear the other. And eventually, one of them hands up. Carl Jung spent 40 years mapping the architecture of the human psyche. He was not a warm man. He was not particularly easy to be around. His marriage was complicated. His friendships were intense and often fractured. He understood his subject not from a distance, but from inside it. Jung identified something he called the persona, the social mask every human being constructs to survive in the world. Most people invest enormous energy in the persona. They shape it carefully, they maintain it religiously. The persona is likable, agreeable, uncomplicated, safe. The intelligent person has a persona too, but theirs is unstable, because beneath it lives what Jung called the shadow, the unintegrated, unacknowledged parts of the self, the anger, the hunger for depth, the contempt for small talk, the desperate, almost animal need to be genuinely known rather than comfortably liked. Here is the trap. The intelligent person tries to maintain the persona in social situations. They try to be easy. They modulate their intensity. They laugh at the right moments. They keep the conversation at the surface, but the shadow bleeds through. In the form of a too honest comment, a question that goes one layer too deep, a silence that lasts 1 second too long. The other person senses something. They cannot name it, they cannot explain it, but they pull back. They label it as weird, intense, off. And the intelligent person is left alone again, confused by the rejection, not understanding that what was rejected was not their flaw, it was their depth. Jung believed that genuine human connection could only occur when two people were willing to encounter each other's shadow, not just the polished surface, the actual interior, the fear, the darkness, the contradiction, the hunger. Most people are not capable of this, not because they are bad people, because it is genuinely terrifying. To let someone see your shadow is to risk being truly rejected. Not rejected for the mask, but for the face beneath it. The intelligent person by nature is always reaching for that level of encounter. And the world, by its nature, is almost always unwilling to meet them there. But here is where it gets darker, because the loneliness of intelligence is not just a social problem, it is a psychological one. Schopenhauer wrote that the amount of noise a person can bear undisturbed stands in inverse proportion to their mental capacity. He was not being poetic. He was describing a measurable reality. The more complex a mind, the more it requires silence, space, solitude to function at its actual capacity. The intelligent person is not merely tolerant of solitude, they need it, not as a preference, as a metabolic requirement, like oxygen, like sleep. But here is the catastrophic irony. The same mind that needs solitude to survive is the same mind that is most aware of the cost of that solitude. The intelligent person cannot simply be alone and feel nothing. They feel everything. The absence, the distance, the question of whether they are fundamentally unlovable or simply fundamentally different. And the mind, because it is what it is, will not stop turning that question over. This is what Schopenhauer called the porcupine dilemma. On a cold night, porcupines huddle for warmth, but their quills pierce each other, so they pull apart. But then they freeze, and they come together again, and they bleed again. They are trapped forever between the pain of connection and the cold of isolation. The intelligent person lives in this dilemma on a cellular level. They want depth. Depth requires vulnerability. Vulnerability requires another person. Most people cannot hold their vulnerability without flinching. So the intelligent person retreats into the mind, into books, into work, into whatever architecture they have built to make solitude feel like a choice rather than a sentence. And the longer they stay in that architecture, the more foreign ordinary social interaction becomes. The muscles atrophy. The tolerance for noise decreases. The performance of the persona becomes more exhausting, not less, until eventually the intelligent person stops trying altogether, not out of arrogance, out of exhaustion. Schopenhauer did not theorize about this from the outside. He lived it from the inside with almost surgical precision. He was born in 1788 into a wealthy family in Danzig. His father, a driven, brilliant, unsentimental man, died when Schopenhauer was 17, possibly by suicide. His mother, Johanna, was a celebrated novelist, charming, social, successful, and almost entirely unable to connect with her own son. She once wrote him a letter that should have destroyed him. She told him that his company was unpleasant, that his complaining and his darkness made him intolerable to be around, that she did not look forward to his visits. This was not a stranger. This was his mother. Schopenhauer moved to Frankfurt alone at 30 and remained there for the final 27 years of his life, largely in isolation. 2 poodles for company, a rigid daily schedule, long solitary walks, no wife, no sustained intimate friendships. He submitted his masterwork, The World as Will and Representation, to the University of Berlin in 1820. The lectures were scheduled against Hegel's. Nobody came. For decades he was ignored, dismissed, occasionally ridiculed. He died in 1860, having spent the final years of his life watching his ideas slowly reach the world. He did not live long enough to see the full recognition. But he had always known it would come, because he was not looking for the approval of his contemporaries. He was building something for the minds that did not yet exist in his time. He wrote, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see." The loneliness was not a price he paid for his intelligence. It was the condition under which his intelligence could fully operate. The silence was not emptiness. It was the medium in which he worked. Now look at your own life. How many relationships have you ended or let quietly die, not because the person was bad, but because the conversation never went where you needed it to go? How many times have you performed normalcy so exhaustingly that you came home and needed hours of silence just to feel like yourself again? How many times have you tried to explain the way your mind works to someone you trusted and watched their eyes go slightly unfocused? Not bored, just unable to follow you past a certain depth. You probably blamed yourself for that too. Jung would say this: "The loneliness you carry is not a symptom of your failure to connect. It is evidence of your capacity for a depth of connection that most of the people you have encountered are simply not equipped to offer. This does not make you better than them. It makes you incompatible with most of them. That is not arrogance. That is geometry. A circle does not fit into a square. It is not the circle's fault. It is not the square's fault. It is a fact of shape." But here is the shift that changes everything. The intelligent person's deepest error is not in being alone. It is in believing that being alone means being unworthy. They conflate incompatibility with inadequacy. They translate the silence of not being understood as evidence that they are fundamentally unlovable. This is the intelligence trap in its most intimate, most painful form. The very mind that can see through every other illusion has constructed the cruelest illusion of all about itself. Your solitude is not proof that you are broken. It is proof that your standards are real, that your hunger for depth is real, that you cannot be satisfied by the performance of connection when the actual substance is absent. Schopenhauer wrote that the wise man will be contented with solitude, not because solitude is the prize, because the wise man has come to understand that the alternatives, shallow connection, performed intimacy, the slow erosion of your own depths to make others more comfortable, are always more expensive than they appear. So here is the truth they will never put on a motivational poster. You will not solve this by becoming more social. You will not solve this by lowering your standards. You will not solve this by teaching yourself to care less deeply, or think less precisely, or feel things less acutely. You solve this by stopping the war against your own nature. The intelligent person's loneliness is not a problem to be fixed. It is a condition to be understood. And once it is understood, once you stop treating your solitude as a failure and start treating it as a feature, something unexpected happens. The desperation lifts. The performance becomes optional. And in that space, something rare becomes possible. Because when you stop trying to force connection with everyone, you become genuinely available for connection with the few. There are minds out there built at your resolution. There are people who carry the same weight, speak the same subtext, hunger for the same depth. They are rare. They will not find you if you are busy performing smallness to make the majority comfortable. Jung spent the last decades of his life in a stone tower he built with his own hands on the shore of Lake Zurich. He carved inscriptions into the walls. He wrote alone. He thought alone. And in that solitude, he produced the work that would reshape the understanding of the human mind for a century. He did not find his people by going to every party. He found them by becoming so precisely, so authentically himself, that the ones who were built for him had no choice but to find him. That is the only strategy that has ever worked. Stop shrinking. Stop performing. Stop apologizing for the depth of your own mind. The loneliness is not the destination. It is the threshold. And on the other side of it, for those rare enough to cross it without flinching, is something most people will spend their entire lives looking for and never find. A connection that is actually real. What I just gave you is the surface layer. Jung's full map of the intelligent mind, the parts that explain why you self-sabotage the connections you actually want, why your intimacy patterns repeat with disturbing precision, why the people you choose are almost always the wrong ones. That goes far deeper than YouTube will let me go here. The algorithm does not reward the kind of thinking that actually changes something in a person. It rewards what keeps you scrolling. I am not interested in keeping you scrolling. If this opens something in you, click the join button. The work I cannot do here, I do there. Most will not. That is, as always,